Hey, what's up? It's Primetime Football, and today I'm going to give my top 10 power rankings following Week 12 of college football. But before I begin, go ahead and comment down below your top 10, and I will reply with my thoughts on it. So I'm just going to go ahead and give mine. I got 1, Alabama, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Florida, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, BYU, and Northwestern. Really, I think it's kind of divided into tiers. At 1, you have Alabama all by themselves. In the second tier, you'll have Texas A&M, Ohio State, Florida, Clemson, Notre Dame. Then in 3, I have Georgia kind of in a tier all by themselves. And then in 4, the last tier, you kind of have everybody else falls into place there. But basically, the teams in the 4th tier, they either don't have the talent to keep up with the teams above them, or they have a bad loss or two. Like for what I have, Oklahoma, in their case, they have a bad loss or two, like Iowa State and Kansas State, which kind of keeps them from being at a higher ranking. The teams in the 2nd tier, these are the elite teams. They have pretty much all have championship talent and overall pretty clean resumes. The reason they're behind, Alabama in the 1st tier is they all have some issues that they've shown this season. Some have bigger than others, and some of them have actually resulted in losses. For example, Florida, defensive issues resulted in them losing to Texas A&M. Texas A&M had sort of issues in multiple places, caused them to lose to Alabama. Notre Dame's had some issues on offense, hasn't cost them a loss yet. Clemson's had some issues on defense and running the ball, cost them a loss. But right now, I think all the teams in Tier 2 are kind of at the same level. And then there's Georgia. I feel like they're kind of in between the 4th tier and the 2nd tier. They have championship talent, that's for sure. But, they haven't really been at full strength, especially on defense, since the Alabama game. And really, you could say they haven't been at full strength the whole year because they just put in the best quarterback on their roster for one game. And what happened when they put in the best quarterback on the roster? Their passing game had the best game passing the ball since Aaron Murray days. And the problem has been the passing offense. Then they play amazing and the run game struggles. So this team just all around very confusing to me. But it will be interesting to see how they finish the season out as they get healthy on defense and JT Daniels can finally take over. So we'll see how they finish out the season. Then at Tier 1, Alabama, all by themselves. Probably the best offense in the country. Defense is playing just as good as anybody right now. It started in that second half of the Georgia game. Before that, they were struggling. They just look a step ahead of all the other teams, really. Nobody's looking as complete as Alabama is right now. So for the most part, what I just said about the tiers thing, I guess a lot of people would agree with. Some people might be upset with how I ordered the teams, especially in that Tier 2 area. So I'll just go ahead and get into my reasoning for those rankings. I mean, I have Texas A&M at 2. Pretty unpopular opinion. But for them, it's just that they have the best win out of all the teams. I would say that a win over a full-strength Florida is better than Notre Dame's win over a Clemson team with multiple starters out on defense and Trevor Lawrence out as well. I do think a lot of people would agree with that. But even then, people would counter and say, well, they have that loss to Alabama. They got blown out. I just think, especially in a year with COVID, a lot of teams started off the year pretty bad. Texas A&M barely beat Vanderbilt at home. Then they got blown out by Alabama. Then what do they do next week? Beat Florida. They've looked amazing since then. Amazing. And another thing you can say, people are trying to argue for Notre Dame to be above Texas A&M, you could say that 12-7 win over Louisville is just as bad as, or maybe even worse, than Texas A&M's loss to Alabama. I have Notre Dame over Florida for a little bit of a different reason. I do believe Florida would have beaten Clemson the night that Notre Dame beat them as well. But I also don't think Notre Dame would have beaten Texas A&M back in October. So record alone is not the reason I have Notre Dame above Florida. The reason is because Notre Dame's kind of answered the question surrounding them better than Florida this season. You know, for Notre Dame, the question during mostly the beginning part of the year was, can their offense score enough points to beat an elite team? Yes, they did. They did it against Clemson. Say what you want about the injuries, but they did score enough points. For Florida, the question's been about the defense. A lot of people have been saying that there's been some improvement. I disagree. I feel like the defense hasn't improved all that much. They just allowed 35 to Arkansas. I know they only allowed 17 to Vandy, but they did not look very, very good at all in that game. Even against Georgia, people who watched that game realize things were wide open for Georgia. Georgia could have easily dropped 35 or more points in that game if their quarterback were hitting throws. But anyways, I just feel like Notre Dame's answered the question surrounding them better than Florida has. Now, maybe one of my most questionable picks, I have Ohio State behind all of them at 5. And the reason is because of the defense. Now, a lot of people expect Ohio State to be so good. So you're saying, oh, the problems don't matter. It's just Ohio State. So they should be 2 or 3. Ohio State hasn't really looked all that good this year, and they haven't had really a good win until this Indiana game, depending on what you think of Indiana. I mean, they beat Penn State by 13. Penn State is 0-5. They're not good at all. That's beating an 0-5 team by 13 points is not impressive at all. But anyways, the main reason I have them so low is because of the defense. I think a lot of it does have to do with COVID. Defenses seem to start off slow all around the country this year. Alabama, Florida, a lot of teams did. And I do fully expect them to improve throughout the season and end up at the top of this Tier 2 list, closer to a team like Alabama. I just think right now, from what I've seen from Ohio State, you can't bank it off of what you think will happen. Me expecting them to improve does not change the fact that their defense hasn't looked good so far this season. So at Clemson, I have them at 6. They need to get healthy and play a more complete game before I'm ready to put them above any of the teams that I have ahead of them right now. So that's pretty much all I have to say about them. And for the lower-ranked teams, I think there's an argument. This is pretty controversial, but I think there's an argument that Oklahoma is playing better football than some of the Tier 2 teams right now. Rattler looks comfortable, and this is probably the best the defense has looked for Oklahoma in a long time. They just held Oklahoma State to 13 points. It was a pretty high-powered offense. Unfortunately for them, their season kind of ended early with the 2 losses to Iowa State and Kansas State. But I do believe right now they are playing really, really good football. A lot of people might get mad at me for leaving Cincinnati out. But the problem with them, they just don't... I have Northwestern in their place. They just don't really have as good of a win as Northwestern. Northwestern just beat Wisconsin, who was very hot coming into that game. And I've mentioned this before. Cincinnati doesn't really have the offense to beat a top team like BYU could. And the reason for this is what you need to be a successful What you need to be a successful offense in college football is to have an elite passing offense. A good defense can stop an elite rushing offense, but an elite defense cannot stop an elite passing game. We've seen that time and time again throughout the past few years. BYU has a really good passing game. Cincinnati does not. So that's why I have BYU above Cincinnati. Well, that's going to do it for the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below. Thank you.